Hi everyone, I'm Jane, and today we're gonna paint a rusty vintage truck. I am so excited to be back from my season break, and I can't wait to bring you some of the paintings that I've been working on. Now, to celebrate my new season, I am gonna be doing a giveaway. So if you would like your chance to win a set of my Essentials paintbrushes, make sure to watch until the end of the video to find out how to enter the giveaway. Also, I'm excited to announce that this video is sponsored by the awesome people over at Frederick's Canvas, who generously supplied me with a bunch of their red label medium texture canvases, which you'll see me using in today's video. Thank you so much, Fredericks. I am in love with these canvases. Now, before we get started, make sure you check out the video description below for a full list of materials as well as the download reference images that you'll need for today's painting. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and now let's get started. All right, today I'm starting with a brand new 12 by 16 inch Frederick's Red Label canvas, and I have not added any extra gesso to it. So I'm going to start with my 1-inch flat brush and wet it in my jar. Wipe it off pretty good on the edge. Now I'm going to do an underpainting here of Cadmium Red Medium and a little bit of Mars Black. And what this color is going to do is it's going to help me keep the green from becoming too intense and taking over the painting. But this is also going to be kind of the base color for my car, so I don't have to put as much work into the car later on. So I'm going to load up with the Cad Red to start. Remember, we kind of squish it in there and that sucks the paint up like a sponge. I'm going to pull a little bit of black into there, and every time I go back for more paint, as always, it'll be a little bit different color. Maybe a little bit redder, a little bit blacker. Just kind of use some medium pressure to start laying it down. This canvas accepts the paint so well. Been really happy with these. Remember, to lay paint down, you use heavy pressure. That puts the paint onto the canvas. And then we come up onto the toe, lighter pressure to kind of spread it, smooth it out, and blend colors together. So I'm not really laying down any more paint right here. I'm just taking that bit that I did lay down and spreading it out. A little heavier pressure there when I need some more. Same thing. I think my brush is just a little bit too wet. It really doesn't matter right now though, because this is just the underpainting, but that's why you're seeing some transparency there. Just have a little too much water in my brush. And since this is all underpainting and you're not going to be able to see, any of this in any amount that's going to matter, you don't have to worry about nice blends, about, jumps in the color changes, any of that stuff. Just work on getting the texture of the canvas, all the little white spots covered. Okay, so we've got our canvas covered now. Now before I start drawing the truck on here, we're going to want to let this dry completely, because if I try and draw, first of all, if I try and draw with my chalk on here, it's going to just gouge the paint. But second of all, if this paint is still a little bit tacky, and I try to draw with the chalk on it, the chalk is going to become permanent, or at least mostly permanent. It will be very hard to wash off at the end, if not impossible. So we want to make sure that this dries completely before we move on to the next part. All right, our canvas is now dry, and we're ready to start drawing our truck on here. So what we're going to do is we are going to work with a grid. Now, a grid is not as difficult as it seems. I remember learning how to do gridding in probably like 4th grade, so it's pretty simple to do. If you've never done it before, don't be intimidated. I think that this is the next logical step into kind of teaching yourself how to draw. So you're going to need a ruler and a couple colors of chalk. So these are the General's chalk pencils. I have 2 colors, and that's because I'm going to do the grid in one color and I'm going to sketch the image in the other color, just so I don't get confused which is which. Now notice my image over here, I have it with the grid lines on it as well, and I have that downloadable for you on my website. There's a link in the video description below to it. You want to make sure, first of all, that you're putting the grid on your image the same way that you're going to put it on your canvas. So this image, I have 12 inches across, so I have 12 squares across and 16 squares down, exactly like I'll be doing on my canvas here in 1 inch increments. So I'm going to take my ruler and put it right up here at the top, and I'm just going to make a little mark at the 1 inch all the way across. So I should have 12 square inches. I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom here. Now I'm just going to connect those lines that I made. You want to make sure that your grid is as straight as possible. So take a lot of care here that your lines are straight, because if your lines are crooked at all, then your image is going to be crooked. And then we're going to do the same thing at the side. I'm going to measure out 16 1-inch sections all up both sides and then connect them in the same way. All right, there's our canvas all done up in a 1-inch grid. Okay, so here we have our image with the grid on it. So what I'm gonna do first is look at my image and decide where I wanna start. It really doesn't matter where you start. You can start anywhere you like. For me, when I'm doing this image, I like to start on this small headlight here, just because it's almost in the center of a grid. I feel like it's a very convenient spot to start on. So that's where I'm gonna start. So I'm going to start by counting how many squares it is up, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 squares up, so 7 inches up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it's on this axis there. So kind of look and determine how far from the center is the edge of that light. I'm not worrying about the little rim around the light, just the light itself. And to me, it doesn't look like it quite goes to the center. So I'm going to put a little mark right about there. That's about where I feel like the edge is. On the top, again, I feel like it's just a little before center, maybe just a little shorter than center. Also on the side and on the bottom. And then I can kind of connect those. But you know, leave room for you to make adjustments, you know, however you feel necessary. If you feel like your light should be a little bigger or in a different place, you're okay to do that. Just because you've gridded it here doesn't mean you have to get it exactly the same as this grid. Now from there, I'm going to move over to the large light. And the large light, there's a full grid between them. And then it kind of starts, it almost touches that far line there. And again, I'm not worrying about the ring around the light. I'm just kind of painting the parts that I feel like are important. And I don't feel like the ring around the light is real important. That one is a little below. So, you know, tracing is great. There's nothing wrong with tracing. But if learning to draw is something that you feel like you want to do, You can't trace forever. You have to push yourself and, you know, try things that get you drawing a little bit more. And for me, that's doing grids, because I certainly am not, you know, the most magnificent drawer in the world. And, you know, improving my drawing skills is definitely something that I want to do. So gridding is something that I've kind of gone back to. You know, I've been doing quite a bit of it lately. There we go. So that's pretty close. It's not exact, but I'm okay with that. Now, like I said, I didn't do the rings. Just kind of take from the image what is important to you and let everything else go. For example, in the image down by the bumper, there's all kinds of little elements going on. You know, there's a bracket where the bumper was hooked onto, some kind of other little bracket and bolts and stuff. I don't feel like those are important. I'm going to completely disregard them. I'm not going to include them in my drawing, but you can if that's what you want to do. I'm going to go over and start on my bumper. So my bumper is 6 inches up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But in this 6th square, it really only occupies about that corner. In the 5th square, it exits right about there. And in between, it moves about like that. So that's really what's easiest for me, is look at where it starts, look at where it ends, and how it moves in between. So it kind of swoops in there and then flattens out. Now we have our bumper, kind of starts just about where those squares meet. It's going to curve down. I'm not going to get too exact with this bumper because it's not really an important part of the drawing. I mean, it's important that it's there, but like its exactness, the bumper in this image is falling off. So it doesn't matter if my bumper's exact. Roughly, it starts in this area and ends about 4 inches up. So I'm not going to worry about making it exact. You're not going to be able to see the bottom of this bumper anyway, because it's going to be all really dark down here. I'll probably have some foliage. So again, not terribly concerned. I'm just going to make sure that this is roughly the same distance all the way across. If you want to be real exact and measure it out as well as you can on your image, go for it. Our tire over here, I'm just kind of making a note of where that, I'm really just kind of making a note of where that blue color is on the edge of the tire. Everything else is going to be dark. And there is one line in here that I want to keep, and it's this kind of a crease where the wheel fender meets the body of the car. If I end up losing that while I'm painting, I'm okay with that. But I want to make a note of it just in case. I might end up keeping it. And it's going to kind of help me transition up into the next part of the car. And right here, it kind of ends there like that. This one ends there, it kind of curves. It just cuts through the corner of that one. It ends about here and curves. And ends right about at the corner of that one. See how easy that is? I mean, it can take a few minutes to do this, but it's not difficult. The back of the fender, about there. It ends just a little bit higher than it starts there. Comes in a bit, and then it starts to angle and move back down. It exits right about there because it's going to cut through the corner of that one and just gently through that square. If you can, if you can do gridding, you can learn how to draw really anything. Take any image that you like, apply a grid to it, and then make sure that you add the grid to your canvas in the same way, and you can draw anything. Now right here, I know that looks really weird, but if you look at the image, that's really about how the front of the hood is shaped. But if we're gonna draw it and we're not comfortable with drawing, we might flatten this out more or make this way too angled. But if you look at the way that it is in relation to the grid, it's very soft here and very hard angled there. And where you can't exactly see because there's like a plant in front, just make it up. Look at where other elements are and just kind of decide for yourself. So we're gonna come up, let's see, exits just to the left of the center there. It exits right where those squares all meet, and it curves in between. About in the center here. Here's another spot where we can't really see what's going on behind this piece. So I'm just gonna pretend like I can, and we'll come back and draw this part later. So it looks like it's gonna end right about there. And again. Now right here, this is where I have to make sure that I count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I'm right there. So I'm kind of holding in my phone like that and putting my thumb in front of the square that I'm working on, just to make sure that I don't get lost, because I occasionally get lost. And the more complex an image is, the more careful you have to be, you know, about getting lost. Now, some people might prefer to use like 2-inch grids, and that's perfectly fine. Some people, you might find that you prefer using even smaller grid, and that's okay too. Whatever is more comfortable for you. This one is fairly simple, but I feel like it has just enough elements to warrant using the larger grid. Oh yeah, let's get our grill in here so that that's not confusing. Starts right about there. And somewhere in there. Let's add our little bit on the front of the hood here. So from where our hood kind of comes to that weird point, that's where we're gonna start this kind of decorative little bit. It's fairly straight, but there's a slight angle to it. And it curves here, just above the top of the hood. All right, the cabin of the car, a little decorative bit on the side, and then we are ready to start painting. So I'm gonna finish this part up pretty quick. I think you kind of get the gist of what we're doing here. All right, to get started painting, I've decided that I'm gonna do the dark green areas behind the car and under the car, and probably here in the grille before we start painting the actual colors of the car. So I've got a little more Mars Black, some Phthalo Blue, and some Cadmium Yellow Medium. You can use any yellow that you like. And I'm gonna use my 1/2-inch flat brush, wet it in my jar, wipe it on the edge. So I'm going to grab some black and some blue and then some yellow. And obviously whenever I come back for more, just like always, I'm going to pick up a slightly different mixture. So I'm going to take this dark green color that I have to start and using the very chisel edge of my brush, cut around the shape of my truck. I'm not worried about that chalk at all. And just kind of pull that out. Whenever I pick up a different mixture of this green color, I'm not going to really concentrate on blending it with the previous color because that's going to help me get kind of a foliage look. So I just pulled a little extra yellow into there and I'm just going to kind of dust it there. Even if a little tiny hint of that red still shows, I'm okay with that. Just right along that edge. You don't have to worry about smearing your grid lines now. You're pretty much done with them. I mean, there might be an occasion where you want to look at the grid marks on your photo. You know, if you're not understanding something you sketched and you want to see, you know, where that is. But for the most part, I think we're done with the grid. A little more black and yellow. Just a nice dark color, a little muted, not real bright. Remember, when you're cutting around the edge of a shape like that, use the tip of your brush. Because if I try to do that flat like that, see how when I push, my brush gets wider? That's going to happen if you try to draw the line, you know, like that. So use the tip of your brush because it doesn't matter how hard you press. The brush isn't going to get longer, but it can get wider if you use the edge. Also, it helps prevent getting that ridge of paint. So if you've ever been applying paint, you know, like that, and then you get this hard line there where you've got paint texture, this, using the tip can help avoid that. I'm just going to break up this color just a little bit more right there. Down here at the bottom, I'm going to keep it quite dark right here under the car, and then we'll get it a little bit greener toward the bottom. So I'm just going to take my brush, it still has the green on it, I'm not worried about that. Pull some extra blue and black in there, and I'm just going to pick those up. That paint's a little dry, so I just dip my brush lightly into some water, just mix it in there. Don't worry about, at the bottom of the bumper here, don't worry about cutting a really hard line there, because our bumper is going to be quite dark, and we're going to have some grass, so you really won't be able to see where the bumper meets this dark color. Just like in the photo, you really can't. So just go right over that edge, nice soft transition from the grass into the bumper. I got a little bit extra water that time. There we go. And right up here, I do want to keep a little bit of a crisper line. Just right along the edge of that bumper. Pull that down. The tire doesn't matter quite so much. And that edge of the bumper, I'll keep a little bit more defined. Okay, now I'm going to go in just to yellow. I only picked up yellow. Start at the bottom. I just dunked into a little bit of water, and I'll bring that up. Good amount of pressure there to blend those together. So let me show you how I blended that again real quick. Light pressure there. So to blend, I took my color, I started down here with it, and then heavy pressure, see that? Back and forth right up into that first color, that dark color. Don't be afraid, get up in there. And right back down into that light color. So that's how you're gonna get nice blends. You're not gonna get a nice blend by, you know, starting right on it. See how that pulled that color down into there? You wanna start well below it, go right up into it, and right back down out of it. Now on our grill here, I've decided to do it different than how I've done it in the past. In the past, I've painted this dark and then come back later and added the red. But I think what I'm gonna do this time instead is draw out right about where I want the little grill bits. Now remember, this is an old car, so maybe they're kind of bent. We'll make that one move in a different direction. And I'm not gonna put as many on my car as is in the photo because I just feel like that's too much detail. I don't want to worry about that much detail. Maybe we've got one here that kind of comes up and disappears. It's like either jammed back into the front of the car or maybe it's broken off something. These will extend up over top of the grill area like that, but I'm going to paint over all of that, so for now I'm not worrying about it. This is all just very general, and I think you'll be able to tell what I'm doing here in just a minute once I start painting it in. I think that's probably good. Okay, I cleaned off my brush because I don't want to take any green into there. I'm going to get some blue black. Never in this painting am I going to use black just solid by itself. I'm always going to mix it with something. So in the case of this area, I'm mixing it with blue. So that's going to be kind of the interior of the grill of this car, truck, whatever it is. And see, I'm making these little grill bits really bent and angly. This car has been seriously beat up over the years. So like I said, how I've done this in the past is I just painted this entire section in with this same color, this dark black blue. And then later I've come back and just drawn on the grill parts. So, you know, you can do it that way if that's what you like. I felt like it just took a little bit of extra time when I was painting because I had to come back and, you know, paint all that part in. And so I just thought maybe I'd see if this was a little bit quicker. I'm not usually worried about how long something is going to take me to do, you know, when I'm painting for myself. But when I'm painting for you guys, how long it takes is, you know, definitely a concern. So I'm not trying to instill in you, you know, a sense of urgency that when you're painting you have to find the quickest way to do it. That's not the case at all. Do it however is the most comfortable for you. Speed is not the goal. You can do an amazing painting really, really quick. You can do a really horrible painting really, really quick. And, you know, vice versa if you're painting slower. Speed really doesn't have a lot to do with the quality of your painting unless you're speeding through something impatiently. Impatience can definitely have an impact on the quality of your painting. Just take the time that you need. See, again, notice that I'm creating those lines with the tip of my brush, not the side of it. So let's go ahead and add in some little trees here, and then we can start painting the car. And yes, we are going to use the dreaded fan brush here. And this is my number 5 fan brush. It is available on my website right now, but I don't have a ton of them left. So if you want one, I would get it now. There's a link up here in the information iCard, somewhere up here. I think it's over here. That will take you right to my brushes where you can get them. So I'm going to wet this in my jar. I have found that when using a fan brush, sometimes you need a little extra water. I'm going to wipe it off pretty good. I'm going to come into my blue, yellow, and a little bit of black is fine too. Notice I'm really just using one corner. I don't need to load it up on the entire brush. You can if you want. I'm going to pull a little extra yellow in there, maybe just a hint of black to make sure that it looks different once I start adding a little foliage in the front. A little yellow. Get some brightness in there. Little extra water. All right, now I'm going to kind of crush the corner of my brush. So I'm not going to do like this and, you know, bend it up. I'm really just going to kind of crush the corner. I'm going to do about like that. That's kind of what I'm going to be doing. So just kind of like that. Take it all the way up. Off. You can flip it over and hit it the other direction. I'm getting these solid shapes because my brush has quite a bit of water in it. So if you want something a little bit more broken, just use your brush a little bit drier. Just picked up a bit more yellow. Don't worry about going over top of your car. That's why we're doing this part first before we paint the car, so that we don't have to worry about messing up our paint job or making the foliage look like it's in front. I want it to seem behind. I'm just going to smear that so that I don't have like a blob of paint. Let's get a little bit of a darker color. See, nothing real specific. No need to be afraid of the fan brush. I'm going to go to my long liner, and I did wet this in my jar. What I'm going to do is grab some green, because I don't want to bring out another color. I don't want to get some brown. If you would rather just get brown, that's perfectly fine. I'm going to get some red. Just looking for a neutral color here, maybe a little bit of black, a little bit of extra water. And then I'm just going to dunk into my white just a little bit. And we'll do some branches. So I'm going to put a good amount of pressure there at the bottom. Kind of stop wherever I feel like I should stop. Like to go over foliage. So there's a bit of foliage there, so I kind of stopped. And just make some branches. Don't stress too much about what these branches look like. See, just kind of some wiggly little lines. Some of them just stop. Some of them appear out of nowhere, go over top of branches, come out from behind them. And I'm just kind of mixing this dark neutrally color, some black, a little bit of white. Nothing real specific here. Couldn't see that one, so I just picked up a little bit of white. Stop there where that foliage is and come out the other side. Just be very loose with it here. Don't try to draw, you know, like some crazy, super detailed tree. Just suggest that there are some branches in here. That's all we're looking for. Just a suggestion. Little branch there. Little piece comes off there. Just going to amp up the highlight and a couple of them, and then I think that's really all I'm going to do. If something's too light, grab a bit more of your dark color and take it back. And that's it. So I'm done with those branches. All right, let's start adding our color to our car. So I'm going to stick with my 1/2 inch flat. I'm just going to pick up Cadmium Red Medium. Just Cadmium Red Medium. And I'm going to start adding it wherever I feel like I want it. Now, I have set kind of some guidelines for myself with the colors that I'm going to be using on my car, but you can do it however you like. I'm kind of saying that the red is the oxidation, so it's really going to be kind of at the top. You see how the older cars, you know, it kind of starts fading on the top, and then as it comes down, you start to see bits of what the color used to be. So I'm going to have my red up here, and then toward the bottom of the shape is where I'm going to start putting the blue. I'm going to say that this car used to be blue, but you can do it however you like. So I'm going to start with my red in here, get it right up to that chalk line. See, it just easily covers that other chalk. And it's nice and bright against that muted color that we added in the first place. Taking it almost all the way down to the bottom of that shape. Now I want you to be really careful about how you apply this. Remember that the truck is 3-dimensional, so it's kind of flat here, but then it curves as it comes this way, and then it curves as it comes this way. So up here, I'm going to kind of sketch this color on sideways, horizontally, which is going to help say that's flat, and as I come forward, I'm going to start curving it down. You'll be able to see that better once I start adding in other colors. Same here, as I come this way, I'm going to start curving it. Let's add a little bit over here where I got that green on top of it. Don't worry about where you think you might want to put your blue at this point. Just get the red on there. Some more of that red. I'm going to come in, I'm just going to pick up a tiny bit of white. Very, very little. Light pressure. I'm almost like dabbing and swiping side to side. I'm not scrubbing. I am not putting a ton of pressure on here. It's kind of like putting down that bit of color and then using the lightest pressure you can to kind of pull it and move it around. But again, see how my brush is going side to side up here at the top. As I come over here to where it starts to curve, I can start bringing that down. See how that helps to say that the car is curved? Same thing right here. So we're kind of going horizontal, and then we can kind of start curving it as we come that way. Don't worry if you get too much white. If something is too light, just pick up more of your red to cover it. I'm going to pick up a little bit more white and start to kind of pop this a little bit more. And not everywhere. Notice it's a little spotty. And I'm not covering everything that I put that bright red on. Some of it I'm leaving bright red. Let's do that on the other side over here. So I got a little more red and a little hint of white right up in here. Make sure I claim that crisp edge again that I kind of lost with the tree. And I just realized you didn't see that. I'm not used to recording now because I've done live for the last several videos. I just tapped a little bit of that red in there because I felt like that white was a bit strong, and just soften it with my finger. Tiny little poke of white. Go back and forth as much as you want. Let's take some of this color into this shape here. Little extra water. Just using the chisel edge of my brush. And same thing up here. So I just have the red. I'm going to reshape that line. And kind of tap that bright red in. I'm not trying to cover all of that first dark color, because that's going to act as like a little bit of a shadow, a little bit more rust or, you know, oxidation, whatever. Just a bit down the edge. Don't worry about the window just yet if you get anything in here, because we'll do that in a little bit. I'm almost placing this just randomly because I know that with as many colors as I'm using, it's quite possible that will be completely different in a little bit. So there's no sense in trying to get it perfect right now. Again, notice I put the red up at the top of my shape here, and down here I put it at the top of my shape. So I left that red-brown showing more toward the bottom of the shape. I'll put a little bit of this in here. Maybe we'll connect that. Let's get a little hint of white and do the same thing to what we did on the hood. So right up here, just kind of tapping that in, swiping it. Sometimes the line between the white and the red is very soft and blended. Sometimes it's quite a hard line. There's a very distinct start and stop between the two colors. I like using this red because it doesn't give me like a pastel-y pink. It's a very kind of orangey color, and I like that. I didn't want something that was very pink. I'll put a little hint of it right in here. And maybe just a hint along the base of the window. For sure in the corners. I like this little bit of white here in the corners there. Pull some of it down quite a bit farther than in other places. Maybe don't add any of it in some places. You know, we don't need a hard outline of this color. You want it to really look like this truck has been sitting here for, you know, maybe a couple of decades. Just out in the weather, that's paint peeling off and oxidizing. See, I made a nice bright spot there. And the rest of it is just a little bit of a subtle kind of pink. The more sporadic and kind of, you know, random your paint colors look, I think the more believable the age is going to be on your truck. I'm just going to zoom you out there a little bit more. Get rid of some of this color. I feel like I need more white. Right there. See, just almost kind of randomly dusting it into a few places. Just what I'm really doing here, you guys, is feeling out the color. Trying to decide, you know, does this color belong here? Does it belong here? And knowing that I can make changes at any time to any of it. This is just the red. And again, we want to make sure that we're, you know, kind of following the shape of our car. So this is the top area. So all of my brush strokes are going to be fairly horizontal. Until I come to right here, this is kind of a dip, a little bit of a crevice. So I can kind of pull that color down like that. Bring this out, again, pretty horizontal. And it can kind of swoop toward that shape as well. Again, horizontal here. Nice and bright. Horizontal, not covering that whole area. And a bit of white, just a bit. Let's start getting that oxidation in there. See those horizontal brush strokes? It's starting to really make the top of that look flat. We've got some more over here. Pretty flat. What I don't want you to do, because I know that sometimes, you know, rendering the shape of something, saying, well, it's flat or it's round, sometimes that can be challenging. And so if you're having a hard time here and you're just, you know, feeling like you're making it look like it's a shape that it's not, or that you don't want it to be, then just take a break from it. Stop. Come back to it later. You know, paint over it if you have to. But don't get frustrated and, you know, throw your hands up in the air and say that you just can't do it, because that's not the case. It just takes practice. I have a hard line there. I don't want to, you know, keep moving it. I just want to soften that line. So I flip my brush over to where I don't have really any white, and I'm just going to kind of move it in that shape. Like I said, that my card kind of starts curving down right there. I'm just breaking that up. We'll bring a little bit of this over here. We've got a little bit of a curve here too. I just want to pop that right there, just a bit more. About perfect. So I'm not picking up a ton of paint. Let me show you real quick exactly what it is that I'm doing here. So when I come in here, I'm just kind of sliding into it. Can you see how much paint is on there? It's just a smear of white. That is not a blob of white. It's just a light smear. Now when I come to my car, I'm not, you know, just doing this big brush stroke. It's almost like I'm taking that little blob of white and I'm going to lay it down there. See how I just kind of placed it? And then I'm going to come back maybe with just the corner of my brush and light pressure. And I'm just kind of tapping, almost kind of bouncing to move that color around. Because if you come in and you keep going, you know, like that, then you're just going to blend everything together. But I like the little bit of texture that I get there from doing that. So let me show you one more time. A bit of white, just kind of lay it down there and then kind of bounce around the edge of it to break it up and move it around. Keeping a bit of red on my brush. Let's go over and do that on this side. So we'll start back here. See, I drew that line and then I'm just kind of bouncing my brush to pull that color out. That is about good. A little more there. Just bounce the color out. Now I feel like the top is dry enough. I do want to add a little bit more white in there. There we go. And even though this is dry, you know, I can still kind of make it look like it's blending into that color by keeping a bit of that red on my brush. You know, and if it's too white, then I can just come back with a hint more red pen, same exact thing. Kind of tap it and bounce the color out. All right, I'm just gonna add a couple of sporadic randomy bits here of that color. Just a little bit of red, a little bit of white. Sometimes it's pink, sometimes it's red. Doesn't matter, none of it matters. The only thing that matters is keeping an eye on the shape that you're creating. Now we're going to do something similar here. First, let's take care of our grill. So I'm going to take my Cad Red and see, I'm going to bring it up. I brought it above the line where that grill is. And I know you can't tell real well just yet because everything is so red, but you'll be able to tell more once I start adding the other colors. Same thing as what I did in the other areas. I'm just adding some bright red. I am not filling in these whole things, absolutely not. I'm using it to kind of reshape them if I feel like the shape is wrong. And then just kind of, whoa, that got away from me, didn't it? Just take a damp brush and smooth it away. There we go. Just getting some bright pops of color in there. Exactly like we did before on the other parts of the car. Now right here, I want this one to kind of be disappearing into the car. So I'm going to lighten my pressure as it comes up so that it almost kind of fades out. Almost like it's just buried in shadow. Now, if you're not using the heavy body cadmium red, you might have some transparency issues. This color is pretty opaque, the heavy body cadmium red. So if I, need to make an adjustment here, I feel like that's too narrow, it will cover that dark color. But like if you're using the Liquitex Basics, it won't really cover that. So just be aware of that. All right, little hint of white. And let's do something similar. Just dust that in there. And if you really get these little bits out of control and it kind of takes over the dark background, you can paint that part back in later. See, now you can start to tell the top of those shapes. They're sitting just above the top of the hood. But we'll make sure that they are all, obviously individual pieces by the time we're done. I'm just being really random with this, you guys. I'm not putting these in any particular place because I know something that you don't. I'm just deciding. I want some there, I want it really pale, I want it really intense. Just making those decisions as I get there. And I think that's good. I'm gonna add just a bit around this area, and then I think we're good to move on to the next color. I just kind of picked up both. Actually, no, I just want red. I want a nice, bright, intense red right here. Bright, bright, bright. Make sure I have a hard line between the bumper and the car there. And the reason I want that color there is just because I do. Again, it's just determinations that I'm making as I go. And if you don't end up doing that, you're not wrong. I'm going to take just a hint of that over the top of the headlight. Maybe around the other side just a little. That's the same type of thing. See, it's kind of a bounce. See on my brush, I'm kind of pressing flat and almost like drawing a C. So if you try and like a backwards C, that's kind of what I'm doing quickly. Nice and bright, and let's do that over here too. I gotta paint that tire in. I forgot about that. I should have done that by now. Make sure that edge is nice and crisp. Again, just being random here. Really, really random. Just deciding to see a color in a certain place, knowing that I can get rid of it later if I decide I don't like it. Tiny hint of white. I really don't want a lot of that kind of oxidation going on in here. I just want to introduce it so that the top doesn't really feel out of place. But I'm not going to have any bright white in my red anyway down here. I will have some white in the blue. Since we're going to be moving into blue-black here in a second anyway, let's go ahead and do the tire. Still my 1/2 inch flat. I'm going to grab some blue and a little black, mostly blue. I want it to be a nice blue color when I add white. And I'm going to fill in everything below my bumper here where that tire shows up in the photo. Notice I'm going nice and soft there. There's no reason to draw a hard line there because it's all in shadow. You can't tell where that tire really stops. You can just see the face of the tire, and that's really what we're wanting to do here. So there's my blue black. Everything else just kind of fades out. I'm going to come in and grab just a little hint of white. See how I kind of pulled that? And I'm just kind of dashing it about roughly in the shape that it shows up in the tire in my image. We'll just pop the highlight just a little bit more right there. And I think that's all I'm going to do for the tire. The tire is done. All right, we're ready to start adding our blue paint. So I'm going to use my number 8 Bright, and I'm going to wet it in my jar. Wipe it off pretty good. I don't need a ton of water in my brush for this part. And I'm going to come into my paint. I'm going to get some blue black. So a bit of black, a bit of blue. I'm probably leaning more blue, but it doesn't really matter. Very, very dark. And then I'm going to grab a little point of white, not a ton, because I just want to lighten it up some. I just don't want it to appear pure black. So like I said, I kind of want it around the bottom edge of my shapes, but that doesn't mean everything. Not all of the bottom edges of my shapes are going to have it. Some parts it might be flaked off. So I'm going to start in this corner here, come right up against the edge of this little decorative piece, right at the side there. And we're going to be really random. I want you to be random. I know random is hard sometimes. Random can be so hard. So that's about how much I'm going to start with. And now I'm going to use kind of the corner of my brush, and I'm kind of dashing it up however you want to see it. Make a little piece come out more. Maybe we've got like a little rogue piece right in there. Remember the curve of your vehicle. Don't forget that. If you start applying any of these colors against the curve, you're going to flatten out your car. So let's say that, like right here, if I just start applying some of this color here and take it straight up to here, this part is no longer going to seem curved. It's going to seem like a flat wall. And, you know, same thing here. If I take this and I just take it straight across like that, well, this part curves it curves toward us and then away from us. So you want to be aware of that. And again, I know that that can be really challenging to think about, but I think that once you mess with it a bit and you've kind of seen that in action, it will make more sense and it will start to become kind of second nature. All right, I think that's probably, well, let's see, we'll go a little bit more. That's probably as much as I'm going to do. I'm going to work in small sections here because I don't want any of it to dry fully before I get to finish it. So just like when we were doing the red, I just pulled out a little slash of white. And I'm going to come to the edge. See, I'm kind of using the corner of my brush. Just kind of start tapping in there, mostly toward the edges of this color. Very randomly. You can go outside of it. Just because you set the precedent that that color is there doesn't mean you can't go outside of it. Same thing over here. And just like when we did the red and white, make some parts lighter, some parts darker. So I think of the blue here as the paint color that maybe this car was originally painted. But it's also oxidizing, so the paint changes as well. So I kind of think of the red as maybe the primer that was under the blue, or maybe it was painted red at another time, or it's just rust, whatever. But this blue I kind of feel is the paint. I'm just going a little bit lighter here and there. More white. Maybe we've got just a hint of it right there. And it's going to come out pretty much horizontal because it's on the flat part of the car up at the top there. All right, let's get some more blue black. I think there was probably enough. Well, yeah, let's pull just a little white in there. There we go. And I think I'm going to run it along the edge here. Pretty much all underneath the shape. And this little shape here, I kind of feel like is detail work. So I might touch it a little bit here and there with some of these colors, but for the most part, I'm going to save it until close to the end. Put as much or as little of this color on as you like. Okay, now here, this is where my car is going to start curving, right? Right here. So if I keep going straight up here, it's going to flatten it out. So I'm going to kind of start pulling it that way a bit. See? How simple to make it seem curved. It's really not that difficult. It just takes you being aware. Let's shape up this element here. Get some of this blue underneath. And I think that's good for now. I'm going to start adding my white before I move on anymore. Let's fill that part in. So my brush is pretty dry. I am working with a pretty dry brush. I know that you guys don't always see my water jar and, you know, when I'm getting water, and so I get asked about it a lot. So I'm going to try and be really aware of telling you or showing you when I'm getting more water. But right now I'm not. My brush is quite dry, and I like that because when I'm working with a drier brush and different colors like this, the drier brush helps me maintain a little bit more of a separation of colors, where a wet brush is really gonna kind of facilitate those colors smearing together and mixing quite a bit more. That's not what I want right now. I like to have to force my colors to mix in some places and allow them to be separate in others. Take a hint of this, maybe right at the bottom here, because I am gonna have some blue on the body of the car here. So I just want to make sure that I'm separating those two colors so it doesn't look like just a big swath of blue that's kind of randomly connecting on the car. Not too bad. Make sure you're standing away from your painting every once in a while. Just walk a couple feet away from it to judge it. Let's get this little bit in here before we start moving down the rest of the car. And you can do this in any colors you like. You know, I think it would be fun if you really experimented here and, you know, look at some photos of old cars and see what kind of colors they used to use, and look at, you know, photos of rust and see the different ways that metals rust and oxidize together. I think rust to me is one of the most beautiful things. I love it, especially, you know, if it's really contrasting with the original paint color. I have this photo, or I used to have this photo. I took it a long time ago. It's probably long gone by now, on an old phone, but it was some kind of a dump truck, and it was a retro dump truck. This thing looked like it was from probably from the 50s. It was painted this kind of a aqua with a little hint of like mint to it. Really, really pretty, kind of retro-y color. And it was so old, and the back of it was so rusted, and the rust was, you know, smearing down the paint and mixing with it, and the rust was like this orangey brown, really bright color. And, you know, so the orange was kind of the complementary color of the green blue that the truck was painted in the first place, and it was just beautiful. I know that probably sounds really weird that I took a picture of a rusty old truck that was ahead of me in traffic just because I thought it was pretty, but I did. I can even make random little pokes. Sometimes, like I said with the red, sometimes my colors are going to be very distinct. Sometimes they might be, you know, much more faded, you know, rather than the white just kind of stopping like that. Maybe it kind of fades out into the red. Let's go down the side here. Now, I know that this red and blue look really weird up against each other. They look really strange. They kind of look like they're floating, kind of phony looking. But I don't want you to judge that right now in your painting. I don't want you to, you know, try and correct that. That's just the way the colors are going to look right now. Just let that be. Because when we're done, they will meld together and you'll like it. I promise. Well, I hope. And just don't worry about them looking completely separate and phony from each other. See, I left a little spot there where there's no blue. For now. Maybe I'll go back and add some later. We'll see. Just almost randomly tapping a little bit of white into there. Don't worry about your red and blue touching, you know, or stopping the blue before it touches one of the areas that you put a lot of white in with the red. Just let things happen. I might take just a hint right around the edge here. Maybe start pulling some into this shape. Again, not too concerned with that shape right now. We'll come back to it. Let's finish up right here. We'll move on to the rest of the body. Just little hints of that blue in there. Okay, let's work up here on the hood. So, blue-black, just like the rest of it. Little dash of white, just to make it so it's not black, black. And I'm going to clean up this shape. And again, not all of this line here has to have the blue-black on it. You could totally skip some spots. But where we are going to have it, remember the shape of your truck. So it's going to come up and it's going to bend. Bring it around here. Maybe I'll let that kind of taper off there. And just skirt a tiny bit of it up there. Let's get our little highlights going. Put a bit more white on there than in other places because I felt like it was too stark, you know, being that blue against that really pale red. But really it doesn't matter because the next color I could have covered any of it with. So we have one more color to do on our paint, but it's not going to be a ton of work. The next color is going to be pretty quick. And it's almost going to be like glazing. But you don't need any glazing medium. And if you've never done glazing, don't be afraid. It's not scary. It's super easy. It's going to be really fun and fast. So like I said, I am going to skip kind of one area. I'm going to skip a bit. I'm going to start back over here. And I'm going to let it taper out there. Take it up the edge of the hood. So I had kind of a hard time with this painting. I've actually had this image saved for quite a while. I've been wanting to do this for quite a while, but sometimes when I look at images, I find myself, and I'm sure a lot of you are like this too, you find yourself wondering, how am I going to make it look exactly like that? You know, with the texture and everything, and color transitions or whatever it is, how am I gonna pull that off? And you know, I know it's just a mental block. There's no reason you have to make anything look exactly like an image, but occasionally a certain image will just really get me with that, and this one really did. Not so much the colors. I'm perfectly okay saying, well, I'm going to do the colors like this because that's how I want to do them. But like the color transitions in this one really snagged me. And it wasn't until I really almost threw up my hands in frustration and said, all right, fine, this one bested me. I did that, and then I was like, okay, I've spent a lot of time on this. It's time to figure it out. Hopefully, you guys who go through similar things, you know, you'll take that as a sign that you really can do anything. You just have to keep at it. I'm going to punch just a little bit of this blue color right up here at the base of the window. I'm not going to go crazy with it up here. We're going to say that most of it is gone. Just almost like hints of it to remind us that that blue did exist here at one point. A little bit there. probably a good amount over on this edge. We'll say this spot still has a bit. So yeah, just, you know, have perseverance. If there's a painting you really want to do, don't take your first, you know, your first go at it. Don't take that as the end all be all. You can do it as many times as you want. You can do it as many times as you need. And if it's a painting you really want to do, then you probably will need to do it a few times to get to where you're happy with it. Remember, like I said in my blog post that I wrote while I was on season break, you know, about failure, the only way that you really fail is if you stop trying. So if you mess up, and you're like, oh, I failed, but you pick up that paintbrush and you try it again, then you didn't actually fail. But if you try it once and you say, oh, I messed up, and then you're done, you don't try it again, then you did fail. And that's sad. Don't fail. I don't want you to fail. I want you guys to, you know, make all of your wildest dreams come true. Paint anything you want to paint. Be as prolific of an artist as you want to be. But that only comes by not giving up. All right, let's add some up here on the body. So our blue-black mixture again. This is really going to be the exact same thing, just remembering the shape of your body. So again, we don't want to come from here and bring it straight down because that's not how the car is shaped. It's pretty much flat here. It might curve toward the light a little bit, but it's pretty much flat. So I'm going to take this nice dark color under the edge here. Just right along there. Maybe I'll let it kind of fade out as it moves to the back. But then to bring it out, I'm going to bring it out horizontally. When I get to right about here, I might curve it down a little. All the same thing. Flat, flat, flat. And drop down into that shape a bit. Let's do our white. I'm going to kind of dust it when it gets back to there because that part's going to be quite dark. It's where the two sections of the car meet, and so it might have a little more of a shadow. So I'm going to kind of pop the highlight on that a bit to make sure that we can tell the difference between the two sections of the car. I'm really excited to see you guys do this painting. I know this is probably a little bit more challenging than some of the other ones that we've done, and I promise we're not doing all super challenging paintings. I've got some pretty easy ones coming, but I think anybody can do this if you just give yourself time. You know, don't be impatient and Don't try and do things the fast way. Do things the way that you need to do them to get the look that you want. That's how you should do them. Let's just pull this dark color around here a little bit. I'm going to kind of taper it off there. Again, this is curved. It comes down that way. Be aware of where the top of your shapes in your grill are. You can put this blue in those shapes if you like. I'm not going to. Mostly that's for time. But also, I don't know that they necessarily need it. You know, when you're painting yours, if you feel like these bits of grill need some of the blue paint, absolutely go ahead and do that. It's not wrong. In fact, I think the reference image that I'm using, it has, you know, all of the colors in the car in that part. I've just decided that I don't feel like I need it. Again, horizontal, pull that straight out there. As it comes over here, it's going to go horizontal and then maybe dip down just a little bit there. I think that's about all I'm going to do on this side. I don't feel like this side really needs a whole lot. Do one more little bit, kind of detached, right there around the edge of the light. Still just little bits of white. Don't pick up too much paint. If you're picking up big blobs of paint, you're going to have a hard time controlling it. So just little bits, just enough to, you know, kind of place that little blob of paint and scoot it around like I showed you. So just kind of like that. I set it down, just kind of tapping it to move it around a bit. All right, we're going to add one more section of this blue-black paint, and then we are going to move on. So I've got my blue-black, little hint of white, and what I'm going to do is say that we have quite a bit. I did pick up just a tiny bit of water there because we're going to cover a larger area here. I want to say that quite a bit of the original paint color still exists right in here. So right up against the bumper. We'll kind of pull that up. Very messy, but I'm pretty much, yeah, I think I'm going to pull it up all the way. Bring it in just around the edge of this light a bit. Down across the bottom. Don't worry if you go into the light a bit. We haven't painted that yet, so it doesn't matter. Maybe we'll come up the edge of it a bit. Let's take this all the way to the edge here. In some places, I still want to leave pops of that hot red showing. That's exactly why I did it there. Maybe we'll bring it down this way just a little into the bumper here, or the fender. And I am being a little aware of this line that I did that says, you know, there's kind of a dip there. I'm not trying to forget about it or paint it out. I'm being aware of it. I'm going to break that up just a little bit. All right. Now I'm going to get just black. I'm going to come under the light here. I know I said I wasn't going to use black on its own, but there's still blue and white in my brush. I just want a very dark area here underneath to say that, you know, years of dirt and rust and whatever from in the rain kind of running over that light, pooling down there has really darkened that up. All right, let's get some of our white. Oh, I might need more white. We don't have to put white on everything in here. Think about what you want to seem really dirty and, you know, like right in there where I put that black. I'm just gonna let the white kind of trail out when it gets there. Maybe nice and bright there. Still just almost randomly dabbing, kind of scrubbing, but not really. It's very light pressure. It's like a tap, tap, tap. Almost in a sketching type motion. Yeah, I like that. Can bring that. Let's get some over in here. Now, as we start moving toward that line, this line here, I'm gonna let that be nice and dark. So let's pull some of the white in there. Maybe those two pieces connect. Pull that white there close to the light. But again, I don't want it to get down into where I put the black. We're gonna let that stay nice and dark. Now, I'm gonna kind of let that taper out so that it stays a little darker right there at that line. But if that's, like, if that just doesn't click with you, sometimes, you know, interesting or weird shapes that you're not familiar with, they just don't click, and you just don't understand what it is that you're looking at there. And so it's hard to paint something, you know, if you're like, I don't understand what that shape is, then that's okay. It's not necessary. That's just something that I challenged myself to keep in there. But you're free to just paint it out and to just say that this is a smooth surface here. All right, before we move on, I'm gonna fill in the bumper. So I'm gonna go back to my 1/2 inch flat and I'm gonna load up with blue black. Doesn't matter if it's more on the blue or on the black side. Just a hint of white, and very loosely just start filling it in, particularly down here at the bottom. So just like when I did the grass, how I didn't draw a hard line there, I'm doing the same type of thing, because it doesn't really matter. If your colors are quite different, you know, to where that looks weird when you do that, then you might want to draw a hard line. My colors are so close in value, you know, how dark they are, that I think a hard line there would look weird. However, as I start to come around the edge here, I do want to introduce a hard line because you are going to see that a little bit more. We don't want that blue-black to get confused with the other blue-black, so let's start throwing in some other colors. Just mixing up kind of a neutrally color there. See, I grabbed a little yellow, grabbed a little red, mixed it with the white, and now I've got this color that's just a little different. It's almost like a metal color. And I'm just dashing it in. No smooth blending here, just dash colors together. Don't worry if some of that red from the underpainting still shows. That's okay. In fact, I might even grab a little bit of it. Up here at the top, we do want a hard edge. So do make sure that you get a nice crisp edge where you've got a lot of blue. So like in this area, I picked up some more red because I want to make sure that those sections are not confused. So we make the color a little bit different. Blue, black, a little bit of white. Let's see if we can get some of that neutrally weird color again. As we go back here, I think I'm just going to start going dark because that area is probably in a little bit more shadow. See how I'm just kind of scrubbing it here? Don't get really obsessive with this part and try and make this super tidy, you know, very specific bumper. On an old car like this, I think that's just going to look awkward. Picked up a little more red and white, and let's just dash in a little highlight in here. I really like that red in there. I think I'm going to need to get some more because I'm about out of it. Oh, there we go. There's a bit more red. All right, there's the beginning of our old rusty truck. So we're going to let this dry and then we'll be back. Okay, so I decided before we start adding the final color to the paint, let's go ahead and add our windows and headlights, and that way our car won't look so red and weird. So I'm gonna go back to my 1/2 inch flat, wet it in my jar, wipe it on the edge. And for my windows, I want very streaky colors, very dirty looking windows. So I've got a little bit of all of my colors, and I'm gonna start with, let's get kind of a bluish gray. So a little bit of blue, not a ton, a little bit of black. And some white. Maybe let's throw a tiny hint of yellow and red in there just to gray it down, kind of neutralize it so it's not like a pretty blue-gray. It's kind of this yucky color. A little extra white. Now I want to make sure that all of my brush strokes follow in the direction that the glass would be laying. That will make it look like the colors are streaking down it. So kind of take a cue from the direction of this center bar. That's going to be roughly the way our windows are moving. So we can start, you know, filling out the outline by going around it like that. But then when we go to fill it in, let's keep those brush strokes pretty much moving in that direction. Keep that color dirty and yucky. A little more black, maybe a little more yellow. Let's try that color. Clean up this edge. Oh yeah, that's good color. Oh, I kind of painted over my bar. That's all right. Really experiment with colors and all kinds of things in these windows. They don't have to look like anything in particular. I do like to smear the colors together with my finger because I feel like that helps give that super streaky window look. I know, in our windows on the picture, we have a lot of colors. We've got some green and everything, but I'm not going to worry about putting the green in just yet because we're going to use a bright green color as a reflection in a couple of places. So I'll just do it all then at the same time. Got just a tiny bit of water because my brush is quite dry. There we go. I wasn't getting the coverage that I needed. And we can make each window just a little bit different in color. Throw a little more yellow in there, a little more white. Maybe let's go a little bit lighter. Don't spend too much time here. You know, like I said, don't worry about making it look like real specific glass. It's just about streaking it and making it look really rough and old and rustic. That's what we're looking for. I have little hints of that red underneath still show. Just like before when I said that, I think that's okay. It's part of the fun of an underpainting is having that color affect everything else, because it really does. And like I said, I chose the red underpainting for here because it's kind of nice to use a complementary color sometimes. So I feel like the red underpainting looks really nice with the greens. But then also, you know, as we were painting our car, I didn't worry about filling in the entire car because that red underpainting kind of, you know, works as part of our car. So that took a little bit of pressure off when painting the car, and that was kind of nice, not having to worry about that. I'm just adding a little bit of this lighter color in here. And we'll do more of this later too. And then kind of smear it with my finger just a little bit. For our little hood emblem detail thing there, I'm going to do something very similar. In fact, I'm going to use kind of that same mixture. I might pull just a little more yellow, maybe a tiny bit more red, and more white into it just to change it a bit. Just fill that all in. If you're more comfortable doing this with a smaller brush, that is perfectly okay. Got little bits of that red still showing in there, and I like that. Just changed it, that color a little bit. Just like the windows, we can come back later and add reflections of any colors we want to see in there. For now, I'm just going to kind of come in and snag a bit of white and just kind of pop it in a few places. I feel like if it's got a few areas that are close to white, maybe it'll look like it used to be shiny metal. I like how much of that red is showing through there. I'm going to leave that. The last color that I'm going to use on the car, I might come in and just kind of throw a couple hints of it in here. But for the most part, I feel like I might be pretty happy with this bit. And I think I may leave it just like that. Okay, I'm going back to my number 8 bright for the headlights. And I'm going to start by mixing a blue-black. A little bit of blue, a little bit of black. Maybe closer on the side of black than blue. And I'm just going to pull a little bit of white out with it. Let me get a little more black. I want it to be quite gray. There we go. And start by outlining the inside of the light. Just really on this kind of top section. See, I'm using the edge of my brush. I'm kind of using it like that. That's how I'm outlining the top of this light. And that's going to help kind of introduce some lines into it so that it's not just a big solid colored circle. Kind of take that back and forth. Well, let's get a little bit of water. Don't want my brush quite so dry. So I'm still up on the tip of the brush. I'm just going to kind of swoop it back and forth. All the way into the middle there. Just wipe some of that off and pick up a little blop of white. I'm going to do kind of the same thing. I'm going to outline the bottom with the white. And then kind of that same, still up on the tip, back and forth, up around the side of the shape. And that will kind of help start to build that reflection. I'm going to take that from the center down. There we go. It's okay if some of that red still shows. There, I like that. That is pretty much what I wanted. I just grabbed a little corner of black and we'll just kind of pop a darker shadow right in there. Maybe just a little dark point right in the middle. Now we'll leave that. We will add some highlight colors to it, or sorry, more like reflection type colors. About the same color, a little bit of white, and let's fill in this one. This one's going to be much more simple. Just kind of fill in the whole shape. Since these are old headlamps, they're probably really foggy, maybe even broken out, so they don't need, you know, reflections, like bright reflections. They don't need to look like fresh and shiny glass. Just a suggestion of a lighter and darker area, I think, is really all we need. Sticking with the number 8 bright, let's start filling in this section because I think that that will naturally lead into the next color. So I'm going to start with the shadow portion at the very top. So I'm going to get some black and I'm going to grab some red because, again, I'm not using black all by itself at any point. Just a very, very dark red. And let's define this shape here. Get that shadow in. Running my hand through the wet headlights at the same time, that's probably not good. pull that down. Around this corner a little bit, can reshape that. That shape kind of got strange. Just soften that. I don't want a hard line in there with that shadow. And let's just get a little point of red. See, not a ton, just a little point of it. And we'll kind of just dash that in there. That might be good. Well, should we add, yeah, let's do that. A little bit of red with a little hint of white. So we've got that kind of pinkish oxidized color again. Maybe just right here on the edge. And notice I did not fill in the whole section. You can still see the grid, you can still see the white lines. Just working on the suggestion of those colors being in there. So same thing on the bottom. Oh, picked up a little bit of yellow. I guess that's okay. Clean up that line. Oh, my line got totally weird there. I totally got off track. I guess I wasn't paying attention. That's all right. I'm not worried about it. A little more red. What I'll do is I'll fix that later when I'm adding the next colors. It's really not that big of a deal. And you know, I might even just decide it's not a big deal all and just leave it. We'll see. Little hint of our oxidized color. Just a little slash of white in there. Okay, all right, our final color that we're almost gonna kind of glaze on here is yellow oxide. And I will be using a tiny bit of white. This part's gonna be really quick, so don't be afraid that I'm gonna repaint the entire car and make you watch all of that. So my number 8 bright, I did wet it in my jar and I wiped it off a little bit, but it is a little bit more damp than other times. I'm gonna come into my yellow and I'm just gonna pull out a bit. I'm not getting big blobs of paint. Just really mixing it with that water that's on my brush. Wherever I feel like I want this color, particularly up on the top of my shades, is where I'm gonna put it. But I'm not worried about covering everything. You know, I'm not trying to cover everything that's pink or, you know, avoid anything that's blue. I'm just putting it wherever I feel like I wanna see it. And then just kind of wipe it out with my finger a bit. So see, you can still see all of those colors underneath it. If I apply it too heavy, I will cover it, and I may do that intentionally in some spots. You know, if there's a spot where you just thought, oh, that part was kind of ugly, I don't like that part, then you can cover it with this. Otherwise, I'm just kind of slashing it on there, rubbing out some lines with my finger. And then once in a while, especially when I feel like the top is good, like I'm happy with the way the top looks with that yellow. So I picked up a tiny bit more and I'm gonna pick up a tiny slash of white, just like when we were doing the white with the red. And I'm gonna do the same thing, just in a few spots. See, just running that yellow white through just a few areas. Just to really pop the highlight and give it that final rusty look. And then we can move on to the next part. I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. Keep a little extra water on my brush for this part. Hit a bit on that blue because I kind of like the way it kind of mixes with it and gives me a green effect. Always remembering the shape of the truck, even with this color. We can do fun things and say, I'm going to take a little blop of it. Maybe that little red spot there, I want to say that is just a solid piece of rust. And just really make that color heavy. Whatever you want to do, wherever you want to do it, however you want to do it. Let's just add a tiny hint of that color in here. We can start moving into the other areas of the truck. Let's do that. Right here, the top of this shape, I'm going to add a good amount of this gold. Particularly here where I feel like it's kind of running down the truck there. Maybe I'll get just a bit of that white. There we go. See, just random, very loose with it, guys. Don't make hard outlines. Let it be really loose. Seriously, rust does not necessarily just rust in a straight line across the top of a shape. Let's keep that. I'm going to pull that down in here. That rust is just running all over the place, I feel like. We've got some in here. Just a bit in that shape. And this area that I kind of took my black line over, maybe I'll pull this rust color thickly over that. See how that looks. Because yellow oxide is fairly opaque, it covers it for the most part. That's not too bad. Put one little pop of that color strongly. Maybe just a little poke of white. This is where you can really kind of let loose and have fun, I think, is applying this color. And if at any time you decide, oh, I didn't like that yellow there, I don't actually want that there, then it's not a big deal. Let it dry and put the color that you lost over top of it later. Let's see, let's add some up on the windows, by the windows. If you covered some red with the yellow and decide you don't like that later, let it dry, paint the red back over it. No giving up. Don't give up. Never look at it and say, oh, I totally destroyed that. If it's just a color, you can easily correct that. Spread a little of that yellow through there, a little bit of white, a little more white than that. And smear it out. You know, if you wanted to take it even farther with the rust feeling, then you could take a little bit of burnt umber or something and kind of punch that in the center of the yellow areas. That might be really fun. If I were painting this for myself, because I just got that idea right now, if I were painting this for myself and didn't have to be aware of, you know, how long my video is gonna be, I might try that. But if I were gonna do that with the burnt umber, I would do it the exact same way I'm doing the yellow now. Just kind of play and put it wherever and see what happens. Let's see, I lost quite a bit of this shape, so I have a heavy amount of that yellow on here, and I'm gonna see if I can kind of force it to look like it's there. Not too bad. I might go back with a little bit of red later. That's not horrible. Let's get some of that yellow. I'm putting it in the window. Just set it on there and streak it. And if the paint in that window is still wet, even better, because then it'll streak together nicely. Yeah, I like that. Almost forgot this spot over here. This is really about the last bit on the car. We're almost done with the car. And we just have to do the grass in the front and we're done. Remember to keep a little extra water on your brush for this part so that you can glaze that color. Let's take a bit of that. There we go. On our little emblem here too. I guess it's not an emblem, just some kind of a hood ornament. Don't forget underneath here, down this edge. But still, on this part, just like before, be aware of your brush strokes. So flat, see that horizontal, and smear it out. Dip it down that way. Let's get a bit of white. That'll really help set it apart back here from the other section on the car. You get a good amount of white on there. I want you to really just play with this. This is a really fun technique. I really enjoy doing this. And it's really not a stressful technique. You know, my best advice for you on it, if you're hesitant, don't use too much paint, be patient, and don't have a lot of expectations. You know, if you go into this with expectations that it's gonna look exactly like my painting, then you might be disappointed, because your hand and your interpretation of what paint colors and what paint does and the materials you're using and everything is going to create something different than what I do. And that's perfectly okay. That's what art is all about. I'm actually going to take a bit of a heavy load of this paint and I'm going to put a nice bit of a ring around the top edge this light. I might do it on the other one, maybe not, we'll see. Just a little on this side. Just run a bit down there. I am still kind of keeping it out of this section in the middle there. What I've done in the past is gone back afterwards with some of the black and red and kind of deepen that shadow, and I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. get a hint of that under this light. Remember that, you know, as a car rusts, when it rains, the water kind of picks up some of that rust and carries it around. So even though, you know, we've got paint here, that doesn't mean that there's not, you know, this yellow rust kind of running over top of it, being carried in from other places. Let's take a heavy yellow here and run it all down the edge of this bumper. And I know right off the bat that is going to be way too bright, way too yellow for me, but that's okay. I'm just going to keep going with it. Far too often we do something and we don't like it, and so we just immediately stop, and then we don't know how to get back from it. If I do something that I'm not liking, a lot of times I'll just kind of keep going with it, because I know I can fix it, and who knows, I might end up actually liking it when I'm done. Finish up the top over here, get our grill done. Into that white. Grill, I'm going to grab some yellow and some white, and we can really make sure that we can see the tops of those. And you can do that with any color if you wanted to, you know, make them a little bit more on the blue side. That's fine too. That one's pretty good. Now this piece, I'm going to add a little bit of the rusty color, the light color at the bottom here, and then let it taper out again so it kind of looks like it's getting lost back in there. So I'm curious, because sometimes I feel a little awkward when I don't really have anything to say, and I'm trying not to use time-lapse too much, if at all. And I know some of you like it, and some of you don't, so I've got a little poll up in the information iCard. So let me know if you like a little bit of time-lapse here and there, or if you prefer the full thing, kind of like what we're doing today, with no time lapse. Even if that means that I don't have any wisdom to impart on you at the moment and I have nothing to say. And I actually just decided to do that poll right now because I had nothing to say. All right, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I wanted to show you just in case what to do if an area is too bright. You can just bring back a little bit of your shadows. So I'm just mixing some more black red with a good amount of water on my brush, just like when I was applying the yellow. And I'm just going to start kind of laying it in and smearing it just like the yellow. Kind of gives us a little bit of that rusted texture as well. You can add it underneath areas to, you know, kind of pull in a bit more shadow. If you wanted to do that in this little section here, just kind of come in and dash it in there. Then that is perfect too. I'm just going to show you in this little spot, and then we're going to move on and finish up. All right, let's get some grasses going, and I am going to use my fan brush again. So I'm going to wet it in my jar, wipe it off pretty good. It holds a lot of water, so if you feel like you need to, just kind of tap it on a paper towel. I'm going to mix up a green that I can see well, so I'll pull some yellow out and some blue. I want to make sure it's not the same color of green as I have here, otherwise it won't really show. Kind of squidge it together. Remember, that's how we mix color with a fan brush, is to not like this, that doesn't mix, like that. And I'm going to use the tip of my fan brush, so the very, very tip of it like that, and I'm just going to kind of flick up. Just light pressure, see? I'm not like gouging it down on there. You don't want to gouge it, because that's when you lose control of the shape. It's just a very light movement. If your color starts to look too, you know, monochromatic and boring, just mix it up, change it a little bit. If you want nice long grasses, just add a little extra water and do a bigger movement with your hand. And you can even turn your brush like that. So on the edge, just using the tip, see, nice long, kind of poofy grasses. In fact, I think I like that. I'm gonna do that quite a bit. I'll mix it up and do a bit of everything, but I really like that. So some shorter ones, and on the edge, and some longer ones. Maybe we'll have some little grasses kind of growing out from the inside of the grill. That seems fun. I know in our image there's a tree. Oh, I really like those grasses growing in there. In our image there's a tree growing in front of it, but I kind of felt like, I don't know, I felt like that took away from it. So I decided not to do that. I'm just going to do grasses. Lots and lots of wild grasses. I know you guys are probably like so ready to be done. This has been such a long video. We just have one more thing to do after this and we really are done. And by one more thing, I mean it'll take a second to do. Let's really get some long ones in there. Don't put too much pressure on your brush when you're doing this part. See? Zoom me out there a little bit. And I'll show you. No pressure. It's just the tip of the fan brush, just like that. I like that. Just break up that bottom. Ooh, I might even throw a little hint of black in there. Get some nice dark. I don't want to overdo it, but I feel like it's just needs a little bit of some darker, more neutralized color. And then I'm done with the grass. Maybe. This is where the whole thing could fall apart and I could destroy it. So I think I'll stop there. All right, last thing, I'm just gonna get a little hint of green on my number 8 bright, and I'm just gonna kind of scrub in a little, it's either moss or a reflection of the green in the area around it. And maybe even just a little up here in the window. And then I'm going to sign it. And there's your rusty vintage truck. I hope you enjoyed painting this with me today and learning how to use color to create a sense of texture and age. Okay, it's giveaway info time. If you'd like to enter to win a set of my essential set of brushes, all you have to do is make sure that you're subscribed to my channel and then leave me a comment below here on YouTube to tell me what motivates you to make art. On July 31st, I will pick two lucky winners at absolute random, and each will receive an essential set of Painting with Jane paintbrushes. Thank you again to our sponsor, Frederick's Canvas, for these awesome canvases. You guys will for sure be seeing me use them again in the future. And thank you again for painting with me, everyone. I'll see you next time.